2023 was definitely my year of fantasy, and I read so many amazing fantasy reads, both YA and adult in 2023, and there are so many more fantasy series I want to check out, continue, and start in 2024. So today, we're talking all things fantasy and a little bit sci-fi and doing a series check-in before the year really kicks into gear. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alessandro, and yes, today we're talking all things fantasy and sci-fi. I don't know what happened in 2023, but I absolutely went through my fantasy era in 2023. I read so many amazing books, started so many amazing series, completed one really special series to me, and so much more. I also want to talk a little bit about sci-fi today because that's a genre I really want to dabble in starting this year. So this video first of all will be completely spoiler free, but we're going to be talking about the series that I've completed so far in the past 2 years in terms of fantasy and sci-fi, the series I want to continue in 2024 that I started in 2023, as well as the new series that are coming out, or just series I want to start in general in 2024. I'm not going to go super in depth into every single book and series because I already talk too much, and I don't want to go in depth and super in-depth with all these series or we will be here forever. So we're going to do a really general overview for all these book series, and again, this is going to be focused on series, not necessarily standalone books. But before we get started, don't forget to check out my Instagram, which is linked in the description down below. I'm back on my Instagram grind. If you want to see more updates about my daily reading life, about the books I'm currently reading without having to wait for every YouTube video, that is the place to be. So starting off, I think we should start off with the books series that I've already completed, and this is a pretty short list because I haven't actually completed that many series in full. The two series I have to talk about with this portion of the video are one YA sci-fi and then one adult fantasy. And starting off, I think we should just go with Renegades by Marissa Mayer. I read the Renegades trilogy in the summer of 2022, and so yes, technically that wasn't last year, but I think it was like close enough and still is kind of living in my mind a little bit. Renegades is a YA sci-fi trilogy that is made up of Renegades, Archenemies, and Supernova. This series is really interesting, and I really liked it because it gives me the same vibes as The Incredibles, the Disney Pixar film, which is one of my favorite series of all time. In Renegades, you have a couple of tropes. You have a dual POV, you have a slow burn romance, you have a lot of intense action sequences, and like I said, kind of similar to The Incredibles, you have a lot of people who are known as prodigies that have superhuman abilities, like the abilities to control water, to fly, to morph metals, stuff like that. I really love this series. It was definitely very YA in tone. It could get a little bit repetitive at times. However, I think if you like The Incredibles and you like really intense action sequences in books, then you will really like Renegades. Another series that I've already completed, and again, I can't talk about too much on this channel because I've talked about it at length in every single video I posted in 2023, that is Fondle's The Greenbone Saga, and more specifically, book number 1, Jade City. I absolutely love this series. If you're new to my channel, first of all, hi, thank you for checking out the video today, but I absolutely love The Greenbone Saga. I think this is a really great place to start if you're a beginner fantasy reader. The Greenbone Saga is made up of Jade City, Jade War, and Jade Legacy, the Jade Legacy being the ultimate soul-crushing book that is so amazing. I don't know what how she thought of that, it's just so amazing. The Greenbone Saga is Fondle's adult fantasy trilogy, and it is really amazing. It's an Asian-inspired urban fantasy trilogy that uses the magic system that is kind of focused on jade crystals. So in this book series, we take place mainly on this island called Keikon, and in this island, there are two really powerful families known as Greenbone families, and in these families, there are people who can use jade crystals to harness the ability of jade, the usage of jade crystals, and that powers up their physical and mental abilities in combat. This book series also overall is more of a family saga. It takes place over 20 or so years, lots of different perspectives. It's really amazing, and I love it. This series definitely opened my eyes to the world of adult fantasy. I think it's just a really unique series in the way it's not, I would say, not a Eurocentric kind of, you have witches, wizards, sorcerers, kingdoms, that kind of typical fantasy that you come to expect from fantasy. It's definitely a little bit off the wall, a little bit unique, a little bit different, and I really love it. I would highly recommend The Greenbone Saga for you. Okay, so those are the series that I've already completed in the past 2 years, and like I said, that was a pretty short list because while I did read a lot of fantasy last year, I didn't really finish any series in full except the Greenbone Saga, and then in 2022 I did finish Renegades. Well, that was in the span of a month because Renegades was amazing. For this next portion, I want to talk about the 3 series that I started in 2022/2023 and I want to finish out in 2024. I think we should start off with the Dayavabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty/Shannon Chakraborty. The Dayavabad trilogy is made up of The City of Brass, The Kingdom of Copper, and The Empire of Gold, and then there's a novella called The River of Silver. This is Shannon Chakraborty's, I believe, her debut series and her adult trilogy, and this is a Middle Eastern kind of centric inspired historical high fantasy series. I have kind of a weird relationship with the Dayavabad trilogy because this is a series I'm not done with yet. The Empire of Gold, book number 3, is the last book I have to read, and I'm already a third of the way through it, but I'm just not ready for the series to end quite yet. I love it so much. In June of 2023, last year, I read The City of Brass for the first time. I didn't love it at the time. I was kind of I didn't love the pacing. The history was a little bit confusing. And then I went through a really bad reading slump later that August, and then I read City of Brass again and kind of pulled me out of it. And I kind of read it more at my own pace. I understood it a little bit better when I wasn't rushing through it. And that kind of re-inspired my love to read the trilogy. So I read The City of Brass, and then shortly after I read The Kingdom of Copper. I absolutely loved The Kingdom of Copper as well. And then I started The Empire of Gold. And like I said, I'm just not ready for this world to be done yet. However, I really want to finish The Empire of Gold this year. I don't know if I'm going to get to the River of Silver novella or not, but definitely Empire of Gold for sure. I like the Dive trilogy a lot because it is definitely more a historical fantasy. There's a lot of history and mythology and a lot of character background that is explored throughout the first and second books. And I think in Empire of Gold, everything kind of is starting to round out a little bit in terms of like some redemption arcs we have for some of the characters. I would also recommend the Dive trilogy, especially book 1, The City of Brass, if you're someone who loves history and mythology. Just keep in mind that the history can get a little confusing at times and the pacing can be a little bit slow in the first book. But if you can keep that in mind and kind of keep that in the back of your head, I think you'll really enjoy the series. This series is very political. It's not as action-packed as I would say the Greenbone saga is, but there's a lot of political intrigue, a lot of great character development, and honestly, I think Shannon Chakraborty is one of the best writers I've ever read from. And lastly for the series, I want to continue. I'm looking at my computer right now, and oh my gosh, this series is so amazing. It's so intense. It's so action-packed. I do not know how I've waited so long to wait to read this series. I read book 1 in November. That is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and more specifically this year, I want to get to The Dragon Republic. This is another East Asian-inspired, more historical fantasy. It does, I would say, not as historical as Daevabad, which is more like 18th century Cairo. I think from what I understand about the Poppy War and R.F. Kuang's inspiration for writing this book, I'm thinking more like early 1900s. In the Poppy War book, there have actually been 2 Poppy Wars in this world, and there are 2 countries that are kind of the center of this book series, and one is being the country of Nikan, and then there's another country that is called the Federation of Mugen. In the country of Nikan, there are people who have been orphaned and are war orphans from the Second Poppy War with the Federation of Mugen, and our main character Rin is one of these war orphans. And the plot of the first Poppy War book kind of accelerates when Rin's foster parents want to set up an arranged marriage to further their criminal enterprise, but Rin strikes a deal with them saying, okay, if I can pass this military exam called the Keiju, and I can attend the most elite military academy in Nikan that is tuition free, I won't get married and you have to let me go. This is not a spoiler, this is on the back synopsis of the book. Rin does test into this military academy called Sign-Guard, but once she arrives, not all is well because she's targeted from the onset because of her poverty, her race, and her skin color. And there's also the signs of a third Poppy War brewing on the horizon with the Federation of Mugen. This series, I wasn't expecting to love the way I did. I gave the Poppy War 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was just so profound and interesting. There was a lot of commentary on class as well. It was action-packed, it was intense. There was, again, a lot of interesting mythology and history. A big part of this book is Rin, our main character's kind of connection with the ancient power of shamanism and how she connects with that with one of her mentors at school. But there are also some really incredibly gruesome scenes, especially there's one chapter in particular in the book that makes me even have a hard time recommending this book to people because it was so gruesome and so horrific, but it was a central turning point in the Poppy War book. I absolutely love this series. I think, like I said before in my book haul in January, I think R.F. Kuang is truly one of the most genius writers I've ever read from, and I do not say that lightly. Her writing, her mythology, her historical influences, the research she's clearly done is outstanding, and I'm super excited to read The Dragon Republic, book number 2, which I hear is just as heartbreaking and destroying as the Poppy War, and then I'll maybe get to The Burning God this year, which is book number 3, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so those are all the books series that I'm in the middle of and that I want to keep working on to completion in 2024, but now I think we should talk about the book series I want to start in 2024, and this is definitely my longest list and longest part of the video. Starting off, I think I actually want to start with a book and a new series that is actually not out yet. It comes out later this month, I believe on the 26th, and this is called Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan. This was mainly a cover / tagline purchase for me. I did pre-order this book because I'm really excited about it because, first of all, the cover is stunning. It's really interesting. And then it also said in the synopsis that it's perfect for fans of Fondle's The Greenbone Saga, and you guys know I'm a big fan of The Greenbone Saga, so I decided to pre-order the book, and I'm very excited to read this. From what I understand about this book, it also kind of gives Daevabad trilogy vibes, where they're in this world, there's a people who live in this kind of like polluted underwater world, and then there are also another people who live in like a city that's a high-rise city above this ocean world. And our main character is someone who is half ocean person, half non-ocean person. I don't know what the exact words for the people are in this world yet, but it sounds like the main character in this book series is kind of trying to unite the peoples of the ocean and the not ocean people. And it kind of goes from there. It's kind of like, it has a lot of mythology. Again, this is East Asian inspired, which is really interesting for me. And yeah, it said perfect for fans of the Bone Shard Daughter, which I also loved, and then also the Green Moon Saga, so I definitely want to read this when it comes out. Next up, we have a book and a universe that I'm very excited to get into. I'm a little bit intimidated because there are so many books and there's so many people that love this series and this universe so dearly, but I think this is going to be the year that I get into the Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson. More specifically, I think I'm going to start with Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I do own the Final Empire, which is book 1 in the original Mistborn trilogy. From what I originally thought, I thought you had to start with the Final Empire to kind of get an understanding and get an entry into the Cosmere, but I've heard from a couple of sources that you can start with Elantris because that is Brandon Sanderson's first book, and that kind of sets up the rest of the world. I'm very nervous but very excited to get into this book series / universe, but I know Brandon Sanderson has amazing characters, world building, and magic, so definitely going to get to Elantris probably this fall, and then hopefully we'll read Mistborn after that. Next up, I have an interesting 2 books because one is another sci-fi, and the other is another adult fantasy, but they're both from the publisher Orbit. I don't know what it is about Orbit, I just am really enjoying all the releases they're putting out. The Green Moon Saga, which is sitting on my shelf, is from Orbit. And the next book I want to talk about is called These Burning Stars, which is a space opera by Bethany Jacobs. This is a really interesting book that I saw on Orbit's Instagram because I don't typically read sci-fi. I'm reading a lot of fantasy, and I've never read a space opera type book like this before. The synopsis sounds really interesting, though. It kind of goes like, in this star system, there is a government and kind of an evil corporation that are kind of, I would say, ruling / in a dictatorship over the people of the star system. At the beginning of These Burning Stars, our main character is someone who is kind of a con woman / thief, and she comes into some information that could potentially cripple this monopoly / empire. Of course, the government and the star system does not like this at all, so they send 2 of their most notorious assassins after our main character, and thus ensues kind of a cat and mouse chase around the star system. I really enjoy these cat and mouse type stories where there's kind of like a lot of action, a lot of chase scenes, a lot of drama, a lot of high stakes. It sounds really, really interesting. I really want to read this soon. I do have this from work, from the library, and yeah, definitely want to get to this soon. Maybe in March, maybe that will be on my March TBR. The next book I want to read is an Indian-inspired adult fantasy that has multiple POV, and that is The Phoenix King by Aparna Verma. Again, this is from the publisher Orbit. I know very little about this book series, except, like I said, it's Indian-inspired. I don't think this is historical. From what I know about this book, it is more modern. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this on my side of BookTube, but I'm really excited to get to this. I do have this on my TBR as well. I don't own it physically, but I'm really excited to get to this one. And last but not least, which is a series and a duology, or I think it's going to be a duology. There might be a 3rd book, I don't know, but this is actually Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I would say this is one of BookTube, BookTok's most popular dark academia / horror books, the sequel being Hellbent that I know a lot of people loved. I'm really excited to get to this because I've never really read a dark academia book. I do want to read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio as well, but there you guys have it. Those are all the book series I'm in the middle of and want to complete and have completed in 2023, and the ones that I want to read in 2024. I know that I kind of went through these kind of quickly, but I did just have so many. I didn't want to be here for 30 minutes talking about every book at length, but let me know in the comments down below, what are some series that you guys love, that you're in the middle of, that you've completed? Please tell me and give me some more recommendations. I'm always looking to see what you guys are trying to read. Thank you guys as always for checking out the video and for your support. It really means a lot to me. My name is Alessandro, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!